And welcome to day 2 of BookTV's coverage of the 2011 Miami Book Fair International. The annual week-long affair concludes today with a street fair on the campus of Miami-Dade College in downtown Miami. But there are several author events as well that BookTV will be covering, and you'll also have the opportunity to talk with several authors. Here's our lineup for BookTV on C-SPAN 2 and our live webcast schedule as well. In just a minute, you'll have the opportunity to talk with Harvard Law professor Randall about his newest book, The Persistence of the Color Line. And in about an hour, author Brooke Hauser will be here. She's written a new book about immigrant high school kids. It's called The New Kids. You'll have the chance to talk with her as well. In about 2 hours, we'll be showing you an event from earlier this month. Bill Clinton on his new book, Back to Work, in conversation with his daughter Chelsea Clinton at the New York Historical Society. Then in 3 hours, another chance for you to talk with an author. Jim Lehrer of the NewsHour will be here to talk about presidential debates he's hosted. Tension City is his newest book. And our webcast schedule, which you can watch at booktv.org at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Nell Irvin Painter and Randall Kennedy will be in conversation with the audience up there. Again, that's at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. At 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time, Isabel Wilkerson, The Warmth of Other Suns. You might remember her from our coverage of the National Book Festival earlier this fall. She will be in Chapman Hall, and she'll be speaking with the audience as well. Then 4:30 p.m., another chance to hear Jim Lehrer talk about presidential debates. And finally, the Miami Book Fair International concludes with author Michael Moore at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, and that will be webcast on booktv.org. You can watch it online. Again, 2 ways to watch BookTV this day. You can watch it on C-SPAN 2, where we'll be talking with authors. You'll have the chance to call in. But on our website, booktv.org, you can watch several author events as well. Go to booktv.org for the full schedule. Well, earlier this year, author and Harvard Law professor Randall Kennedy sat down for our Afterwards program. He was interviewed by April Ryan of the Urban Radio Network about his newest book, The Persistence of the Color Line. We're going to show you just a small portion of that, and then we'll be back live with Professor Kennedy to take your calls.
I think that Barack Obama has satisfied realistic expectations. Some people truly did have unrealistic expectations, and there are some people who, were really sort of swept up and had some sort of millenarian hopes. I mean, there were some people who
they viewed him as a savior.
They did. They absolutely did. There was this sense that the day after he was sworn in, there was going to be a new blank page, and that everything was going to be completely different. Well, has he fulfilled that? No. But of course, that was a naive expectation. I think if we were going to talk about Black America, I think most Black Americans actually had a more realistic notion. They recognized, number one, that he was inheriting tremendous difficulties, especially with the economy. They recognized that as a Black politician, he would be scrutinized more than a white politician with respect to racial policies.
And remember, there is still disproportionate numbers in almost every sector between Blacks and whites,
Absolutely.
Hispanic and whites.
Absolutely. If we're in every aspect of American life, I don't care if we're talking about life expectancy. I don't care if we're talking about access to medical attention. I don't care if we're talking about employment, housing, incarceration, you name it. And we still have a racial hierarchy where people of color are getting the short end of the stick, by and large. White Americans are getting, a better deal. That was the case before Barack Obama. That's the case now. And frankly, it's going to be the case after Barack Obama leaves the White House. I think most black Americans had some inkling of that. They understood that. And they also understood that with respect to racial policies, detractors of the president, that is to say Barack Obama, would have, they would be waiting for anything that they could jump on to say, aha, see, this black guy is showing favoritism to black America. That's a dilemma. Are there people that are, looking for any and every opportunity to accuse the president of racial favoritism? The answer to that is yes, there are. There are. And to combat that, the president is very careful around racial issues. In fact, he tiptoes around racial issues. Now, some blacks are critical of him. Some blacks think that the president has not been forthright enough, has not been forthcoming enough, has not been militant enough with respect to racial issues. Do I think that they have a point? Yeah, I think they have a point. I think it's an arguable proposition. What I would say, though, is he has a special dilemma facing him. He's going to be criticized if he goes this way. He's going to be criticized if he goes this way. I think black people recognize the special dilemma that Barack Obama faces, and in light of that special dilemma, I think that the great mass of black people are showing are being realistic, are being extremely patient, and are giving him leeway given his special circumstance.
A White House official told me that race and politics will always follow this president.
Mm-hmm.
But why does he tiptoe around race?
He tiptoes around it because it's such a volatile issue. You mentioned a moment ago the famous beer summit.
Yeah.
You may recall, just quickly, one of my colleagues at Harvard University, Henry Louis Gates, very well-known academic, is in his house. He is coming back from China. He's trying to get in his house. A neighbor sees two black men, trying to push a door to get in. The neighbor calls the police, says, gosh, I don't know if these guys are trying to break in, but maybe they are. You better go check it out. By the time the police come, Henry Louis Gates Jr. is in his house. Police officer says, I'm checking this out. Can you show me some ID? Professor Gates shows his ID. The police officer still seems to be somewhat skeptical. One thing leads to another. They have words. Professor Gates is, quite upset, thinks that racial discrimination had something to do with the police officer.
But was it arrogance and insensitivity? Could it
maybe,
have been? Okay.
maybe. Let's suppose, for the sake of argument, that Henry Louis Gates was short-tempered, and maybe let's suppose he wasn't being deferential towards the officer. Let's even suppose that he was being arrogant. Is being arrogant with respect to a police officer a crime? I don't think so. I hope not. And I would also hope that police officers, well-trained police officers, would be trained to deal with the citizenry and not arrest people simply because a citizen is, for the sake of argument, being arrogant. In any event, the officer arrests Henry Louis Gates, even though the professor had showed that, hey, this was his house. Well, this becomes something of a firestorm. There's a press conference. The president is asked his views of this. The president, Barack Obama, says, first of all, I don't know all the facts, but given what I do know, am I going to say this is racial discrimination? No, I'm not. He does not accuse the police officer of engaging in racial discrimination. What he does say is, he says, it does appear that this was a stupid action insofar as the professor had given proof that this was his house. He said this was stupid. He says this was stupid. He does not say it's racially discriminatory, merely that it is stupid. There are people who immediately went on the attack and accused the president of engaging in a playing of the race card. To mention one person, Glenn Beck, well-known TV personality, he says, Glenn Beck said that this showed that Barack Obama has a problem with white culture, that this shows that he's a racist. The president didn't say anything about